The rope burned into Emmy's wrists as her own father shoved her onto the auction platform. 19 years old, barefoot in the December snow, and the man who gave her life was selling her like cattle. "Healthy girl," the auctioneer shouted. "Starting bid, $100. Emmy didn't cry. She'd stopped crying the day her father lost their farm to whiskey and gambling. Now she just stared at the gray Montana sky and waited for someone to decide what her life was worth. Subscribe to our channel and follow Emmy's story to the very end. Comment your city below so I can see how far this tale has traveled. Silver Creek, Montana Territory, December 1883. 200. The voice came from the back of the crowd. Emmy couldn't see who'd spoken, but she saw the men near the front shift uncomfortably. Whispers rippled through the gathering like wind through dead grass. 200 from Silas Crane, the auctioneer announced. Emmy's blood went cold. She knew that name. Everyone in Silver Creek knew that name. Silas Crane owned the mining company that had swallowed half the territory. He owned the bank. He owned the sheriff. And now he wanted to own her. A man stepped forward, and Emmy understood immediately why the crowd had gone quiet. He was tall, well-dressed with silver streaking his dark hair and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He looked at her the way a wolf looks at a wounded deer. "Pretty little thing," Crane said loud enough for everyone to hear. "I've been needing someone to keep my house. Gets lonely up there on the hill." Emmy's father grabbed her arm and squeezed. "Don't you say nothing," he hissed. "Don't you ruin this for me." She looked at him, this man who'd held her as a baby, who'd taught her to read, who'd promised her dying mother he'd keep her safe, and felt nothing but emptiness. 250. Another voice called. Crane's smile flickered. He turned to see who dared to bid against him. Emmy turned too. The man stood at the edge of the crowd, apart from the others. He was tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a worn coat dusted with snow. His face was weathered hard, with several days of stubble on his jaw. But it was his eyes that caught Emmy's attention. They were tired. Bone-deep tired, the kind that sleep couldn't fix. "Caleb Thornton," someone muttered. "What's he doing here?" 300. Crane didn't even look at Thornton. His eyes stayed on Emmy, moving over her slowly. 350. Now Crane turned. His smile was gone. "You can't afford that, Thornton. Everyone knows your ranch is failing." 400. The crowd went silent. $400 was more than most men made in a year. Crane laughed a cold sound. "You're being foolish. What do you want with a girl anyway? You've already got 5 mouths to feed that you can barely manage." Thornton's jaw tightened. Emmy saw his hands curl into fists at his sides. 500, Crane said, pulling out a leather wallet. "Final offer. I don't like games, Thornton." Emmy's heart sank. $500. No one could match that. She was going to belong to Silas Crane, and everyone knew what happened to women who belonged to Silas Crane. Thornton reached into his coat. For a moment, Emmy thought he was giving up. Then he pulled out a small leather pouch and threw it at the auctioneer's feet. 600. Cash. The auctioneer's eyes went wide. He scrambled to open the pouch, counted the bills inside, and his jaw dropped. $600, he stammered. "Going once." Crane's face had gone red. "Where did you get that money? Thornton, did you sell your dead wife's jewelry?" Thornton moved so fast Emmy barely saw it. One moment he was standing 10 feet away. The next he had Crane by the collar, lifting him onto his toes. "Don't you ever speak of my wife again." His voice was quiet. That was what made it terrifying, the absolute calm in it, like the stillness before a storm. "Get your hands off me," Crane snarled. "I'll have you arrested." "For what?" "Defending my family's honor." Thornton released him with a shove. "The bid stands. $600. We're done here." The auctioneer looked between them, clearly terrified of both. "Going twice. Sold to Caleb Thornton." Crane straightened his coat, his eyes never leaving Thornton. "You're making a mistake. That ranch of yours won't last the winter, and when it fails—" His gaze shifted to Emmy. I'll be waiting." He turned and walked away, the crowd parting for him like water. Emmy's father released her arm and stepped back, wiping his hands on his trousers. "Well, that's done then. Good luck to you, girl." He started to walk away. "Wait." Emmy's voice came out stronger than she expected. "That's all you sell me and just walk away." Her father stopped, but didn't turn around. "What do you want me to say? You think I wanted this? Your mother's medicine cost everything we had. The farm's gone. I got nothing left. You have me." Had. He finally looked at her, and she saw no guilt in his eyes. Just exhaustion and something that might have been relief. Thornton paid good money. Be grateful. Could have been worse. Could have been Crane. He walked away, disappearing into the crowd, and Emmy watched him go. She waited for grief, for anger, for something. Nothing came. Just that empty space where love used to be. "Miss." She turned. Thornton stood a few feet away, not looking at her. His eyes were fixed on the mountains in the distance. "Wagons this way. Storm's coming. We've got 20 miles to cover." He started walking without waiting for her response. Emmy looked down at her bare feet, blue from the cold, and at the rope still hanging from her wrists. Then she lifted her chin and followed. The wagon waited at the edge of town. 2 draft horses stamped impatiently, their breath fogging in the freezing air. An older woman sat on the bench, wrapped in a heavy wool blanket. She was perhaps 60, with gray hair tucked under a bonnet and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "This her?" the woman asked. "This is her." "Lord have mercy." The woman's eyes swept over Emmy, the thin dress, the bare feet, the rope burns on her wrists. "Get that child in the wagon right now, and give her your coat, Caleb Thornton, before she freezes to death." "Nettie. Don't you Nettie me. Coat, now." Thornton shrugged off his coat without argument. When he draped it over Emmy's shoulders, the warmth hit her like a wave. Leather and wood smoke, and something else. Something safe. "Thank you," she whispered. He grunted and turned away. "Get in, child." Nettie patted the seat beside her. "I'm Nettie Burns. I run the household, what's left of it. You got a name?" "Emmeline Cole. Emmy." "Emmy." Nettie nodded. "Good, strong name. You're going to need to be strong, girl. That house—" She shook her head. "Well, you'll see soon enough." The wagon lurched forward. Silver Creek fell away behind them, and Emmy pulled Thornton's coat tighter, trying to stop shaking. The cold had settled into her bones. She wasn't sure it would ever leave. They rode in silence for nearly an hour. Snow began to fall, thick flakes that stuck to everything. Emmy's teeth chattered despite the coat, and Nettie pulled a blanket from behind the seat and wrapped it around her. "Mr. Thornton," Emmy finally said, "why did you pay $600 for me?" He didn't turn around. "I've got 5 children. Their mother died 2 years ago. I've hired 4 housekeepers since. None lasted more than a week." "Why not?" "The children ran them off." Emmy absorbed this. 5 children who'd lost their mother and were angry enough to drive away every woman who tried to help. That explained the money, maybe. But it didn't explain everything. "There's more," Nettie said quietly. "The youngest, Grace, she's 5. She hasn't spoken since her mama died. Not one word in 2 years. She can't speak." "She can. Doctor says there's nothing wrong with her voice. It's grief. Grief that got stuck inside and won't come out." Emmy thought about that. A little girl so broken by loss that she'd locked her voice away. And the others? Wyatt's 12, oldest. He thinks he's the man of the house now. Takes care of the younger ones, tries to keep everything running. He's angry, that one. Angry at God, angry at his pa, angry at the world. Ruth's 10. Thornton said his first words in miles. She tries to mother the others, makes herself sick with worry. Hasn't been a child since Hannah died. Samuel's 7, Nettie continued. Quiet boy, sensitive, feels everything too deeply, cries when he thinks no one can hear. And the baby? Emmy asked. Eli, Just turned 2. Nettie's voice softened. He doesn't remember his mama at all. That's almost worse in a way. The others at least have memories. Emmy looked at Thornton's back. His shoulders were rigid, his hands tight on the reins. She could see the tension in every line of his body. Mr. Thornton, why do you need me? Why not just let Nettie manage the children? I'm 62 years old, Nettie answered for him. Can't chase a 2-year-old anymore, much less 5 children. And Caleb, she glanced at his back. He works dawn to dusk trying to keep that ranch alive. Hasn't got time to be a proper father even though he wants to be. The children need someone, Thornton said quietly. Someone who'll stay. Someone who won't run off the first time Wyatt puts a snake in her bed, or Grace stares at her without speaking. Will they accept me? No. His voice was flat. They'll hate you. They'll try everything they can think of to make you leave. They've been doing it for 2 years because every time someone new comes, it reminds them that their mother isn't coming back. Emmy watched the snow fall, thinking about 5 broken children and a father who was barely holding himself together. I won't run, she said. Thornton finally looked at her over his shoulder. Something flickered in his eyes, surprise maybe, or doubt. You say that now. You don't know them yet. I know what it's like to lose a mother. Mine died when I was 15, and I know what it's like to be abandoned by the person who's supposed to protect you. Emmy met his gaze steadily. I won't do that to your children. I can't promise I'll succeed, but I can promise I won't abandon them. Thornton stared at her for a long moment. Then he turned back to the horses without a word. But something in his shoulders had relaxed just slightly. The ranch appeared through the snow 2 hours later. A big wooden house, a barn corrals with horses huddled together against the wind. Everything looked worn-weathered, struggling just like its owner. Broken Bow Ranch, Nettie said. 3 generations of Thorntons have worked this land. Thornton stopped the wagon near the house. He climbed down without helping Emmy. Just walked to the porch and stopped. Wyatt Ruth. Bring everyone outside. Now. Silence. I said now. The door creaked open. A boy stepped out first, tall for 12 with dark hair like his father, and eyes that held far too much suspicion. Behind him came a girl, thin and pale, clutching a toddler on her hip. Then another boy, smaller, half hiding behind his sister. And finally, a little girl, with tangled brown hair, clutching a ragged doll against her chest. 5 children. 5 pairs of eyes staring at Emmy with varying degrees of hostility. This is Miss Cole, Thornton said. She'll be staying with us. You'll treat her with respect. Like the last one. The oldest boy, Wyatt, crossed his arms. She screamed so loud when she found the snake that she woke the baby. That wasn't funny, Wyatt. Wasn't meant to be funny. Was meant to make her leave. It worked. This is different. How? Ruth stepped forward, the toddler Eli squirming in her arms. How is this one any different? She'll try to replace Mama. They always do. They want us to call them Mother and pretend like everything's normal. I'm not here to replace anyone. Everyone turned to Emmy. She stepped forward, the snow crunching under her borrowed boots. Nettie had given her a pair in the wagon. Your mama was your mama. No one can ever take that away from you. I'm not here to be your mother. I'm here to cook your meals and clean the house and make sure you're taken care of. We don't need taking care of, Wyatt said. We've been doing fine. I can see that. Emmy's eyes moved to Ruth, who was struggling to hold the heavy toddler while also trying to keep Samuel behind her. You've all been very brave, but being brave all the time is exhausting, isn't it? Wyatt's expression flickered just for a moment. I'm not asking you to like me, Emmy continued. I'm not asking you to trust me. I'm just asking you to let me help, that's all. The last one said that too, Ruth said. Then she tried to throw away Grace's doll. Emmy looked at the little girl clutching the ragged doll. Grace, the one who hadn't spoken in 2 years. "Is that the doll your mama made for you?" Grace's arms tightened around it, but she didn't answer. Didn't even acknowledge that Emmy had spoken. "One of the housekeepers said it was dirty," Samuel whispered. "Said it had germs. Grace bit her." Good for Grace. The children stared at her. Even Thornton looked surprised. "If someone tried to take away the last thing I had from my mother, I'd bite them too." Emmy crouched down in the snow, bringing herself to Grace's level. "I'm not going to touch your doll. I'm not going to throw anything away that isn't mine, and I'm not going to pretend your mama didn't exist." Grace stared at her with those huge, silent eyes. Then she leaned over and whispered something in Samuel's ear. "She wants to know if you can tell stories," Samuel said. "My papa used to tell me stories every night before everything went wrong. I remember most of them." Another whisper. "She wants to know if they're good ones, not boring ones about princesses waiting to be rescued. The best ones I know are about girls who rescue themselves, and clever foxes, and wolves who aren't always the villains." Grace whispered again, longer this time. "She says—" Samuel hesitated, looking at his father. "She says maybe you can stay, for now, but if you try to be our mother, she'll put spiders in your bed." Fair enough. Emmy stood, her knees aching from the cold. Wyatt was still glaring at her, but there was something uncertain in his expression now. Ruth was watching her with narrowed eyes, calculating. Samuel had stopped hiding behind his sister, and Grace. Grace was still staring, but she'd taken one tiny step forward. "It's freezing," Thornton said. Everyone inside. The children filed into the house. Wyatt going last, his eyes never leaving Emmy. She waited until they'd all gone in, then turned to Thornton. "The doll. Did their mother make it? The night before she died?" His voice was rough. "Grace was 3. Hannah knew she wasn't going to survive the fever. She stayed up all night making that doll, so Grace would have something to hold on to." "What was it called?" "The doll." Thornton frowned. "Hannah. Grace named it Hannah, after her mother." Emmy's chest tightened. A little girl who couldn't speak, clutching a doll named after the mother she'd lost. "I'll do my best for them, Mr. Thornton. I can't promise miracles, but I'll do my best." He looked at her for a long moment, really looked like he was seeing her for the first time. "Call me Caleb," he said quietly. "And for what it's worth, thank you for not running yet." He walked inside, leaving Emmy standing in the snow. "He's a good man," Nettie said, appearing at her elbow. "Broken, but good. Lost himself when Hannah died. Those children are the only thing keeping him alive." "And who's keeping them alive?" "That's the problem, isn't it?" Nettie started toward the house. "Come on, let's get you settled before you freeze solid." Emmy followed her inside. The house was warm, a fire burning in a big stone fireplace, but it felt empty. Dust on every surface. Dishes piled in the kitchen. Toys scattered across the floor that no one had picked up in weeks. "Your room's upstairs," Nettie said. "Second door on the left. Nothing fancy, but it's clean. Come down when you're ready." Emmy climbed the stairs on shaking legs. Found the room small, simple, with a narrow bed and a window looking out at the storm. Someone had left a pitcher of water and a fresh towel. She sat on the edge of the bed and let herself shake. Just for a moment. The fear and exhaustion and grief of the day crashed over her all at once. Her father had sold her. Her own father. And now she was here in a stranger's house, responsible for 5 children who hated her, and a man who looked at her like she was his last desperate hope. Emmy splashed water on her face, straightened her spine, went back downstairs. Dinner was a disaster. Ruth had made some kind of stew that was mostly potatoes and salt. Eli threw food on the floor. Samuel wouldn't eat because Ruth had made him sit next to Emmy. Wyatt ate in hostile silence, his eyes never leaving her. And Grace sat perfectly still, feeding tiny pieces of bread to her doll. "So, Miss Cole," Wyatt said, his voice dripping with mock politeness, Where did you come from? A farm outside Silver Creek. And how'd you end up on that auction platform? Wyatt. Caleb's voice was sharp. What I just want to know who's living in our house. Emmy set down her spoon. My father sold me to pay his debts. He liked whiskey more than he liked me. The table went silent. That's... Ruth's voice faltered. That's awful. It is, but it's also the truth. I'm not going to pretend my life has been easy, and I'm not going to pretend yours has either. We've all lost something. The question is what we do now. Wyatt stared at her. What do you mean? I mean we can keep being angry at the world, or we can try to build something new. I'm not saying we forget the people we've lost, but we can't let grief be the only thing that defines us. That's easy for you to say. Is it? Emmy met his eyes. My mother died when I was 15. I watched her waste away for 6 months, and the man who was supposed to take care of me just sold me like livestock. Trust me, Wyatt, nothing about this is easy for me. Something shifted in Wyatt's expression. Not acceptance, not yet, but maybe the beginning of understanding. Can I be excused? He muttered. Caleb nodded, and Wyatt disappeared upstairs. The rest of dinner passed in uncomfortable silence. Afterward, Emmy washed dishes while Nettie dried. Caleb retreated to his study. The children went upstairs. That went better than expected, Nettie said. That was better. The last housekeeper had mashed potatoes thrown at her by minute 3. Nettie hung up the towel. You handled Wyatt well. He's the key, you know. Win him over and the others will follow. How do I win him over? I don't know. Hannah was the only one who could reach him. Nettie paused at the door. But you did something right tonight. You told him the truth. These children have been lied to, enough people telling them everything's going to be fine. Their mama's in a better place. All that nonsense. They don't need comfort. They need honesty. She left, and Emmy finished the dishes alone. Later, she climbed the stairs to the children's room. The 4 younger ones shared a large space with 2 sets of bunk beds. Wyatt had his own room, the privilege of being oldest, or maybe just the burden. Emmy knocked softly on the younger children's door. What? Ruth's voice suspicious. I thought maybe... If anyone wanted a story before bed. Silence. Then whispering. Then the door creaked open. Samuel stood there trying to look tough and failing completely. Grace wants a story, not me. I'm too old for stories. Of course. Emmy stepped inside. The room was messy, but not dirty clothes on the floor. Toys scattered everywhere, drawings pinned to the walls. Ruth sat on one of the lower bunks with Eli already asleep beside her. Grace sat on the opposite bunk, her doll clutched tight, watching. What kind of story? Emmy asked. Samuel relayed the question to Grace, who whispered in his ear. She wants one about a girl who rescues herself. Emmy settled into the chair between the beds. Once upon a time, there was a girl who lived at the edge of a great forest. Everyone in her village said the forest was dangerous, full of wolves and witches and things with sharp teeth. But the girl knew something they didn't. Grace leaned forward slightly. Ruth pretended not to care, but didn't look away. She knew that sometimes the most dangerous place is the one where everyone tells you you're safe. Emmy dropped her voice lower. And sometimes the darkest forest is the only path to freedom. She told the story the way her father had told it to her, back when he was still her father, before the whiskey stole him away. She paused at the frightening parts, let her voice rise with excitement, drop to a whisper at the moments of tension. By the end, Samuel had stopped pretending not to listen. Ruth's suspicious expression had softened. Even Eli had woken and was watching with wide eyes. And Grace had moved to the edge of her bed, her doll forgotten beside her. That's all for tonight, Emmy said. It's late. That was okay, Samuel admitted. I guess. Ruth rolled her eyes but didn't contradict him. Emmy moved toward the door, stopped with her hand on the handle. Good night, everyone. Sweet dreams. She opened the door. Good night. Emmy froze. The voice was tiny, barely more than a breath, but it came from Grace's bed. She didn't turn around, didn't want to make it a big thing, didn't want to scare the word back into hiding. Good night, Grace, she whispered back. She stepped into the hallway, closed the door gently. Her hands were shaking. She made it downstairs on unsteady legs. Caleb stood by the fireplace, a glass of whiskey in his hand. He looked up when she entered. The children asleep. Almost. Emmy's voice wasn't steady. Mr. Thornton, Caleb. Grace spoke to me. He went completely still. What? She said good night, just now, to me. The glass trembled in his hand. He set it down carefully on the mantel. She hasn't spoken to anyone since Hannah died. Not even me. His voice was rough. 2 years. 2 years of silence. I didn't do anything special. I just told them a story. You did more than that. He looked at her, and she saw tears in his eyes. You saw them. Not problems to be managed. Children to be loved. They're easy to love. No, they're not. They're difficult and angry and broken. He picked up his glass again, stared into it. Just like their father. Emmy didn't know what to say. She stood there in the firelight watching this man who'd paid $600 for a stranger because he was desperate to save his children. Get some sleep, Caleb finally said. Tomorrow will be hard. There's a lot of work, and Wyatt will probably try to test you again. I can handle Wyatt. Maybe. He looked up at her. But can you handle Silas Crane, because he doesn't give up easily? And he's going to come for you. Emmy remembered Crane's eyes at the auction. The way he'd looked at her. The promise in his voice when he'd said, I'll be waiting. Let him come, she said. I'm not afraid. You should be. Maybe. But I've spent my whole life being afraid of men who thought they owned me. My father. The debt collectors. The men at that auction. She straightened her spine. I'm done being afraid. Caleb studied her for a long moment. Then slowly he nodded. Good night, Miss Cole. Emmy. If I'm calling you Caleb, you can call me Emmy. Something almost like a smile crossed his face. Good night, Emmy. She went upstairs to her small room, lay down in her narrow bed, listened to the storm howl outside. Grace had spoken to her. One word, one whisper. But it meant everything. She'd been sold at auction, abandoned by her father, delivered into a house full of broken people. And somehow, impossibly, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Emmy closed her eyes and slept. And in the darkness outside, a rider watched the house from the ridge. Silas Crane sat motionless on his horse, snow gathering on his shoulders, his eyes fixed on the window where a single candle still burned. Enjoy tonight, Miss Cole, he murmured. It won't last. He turned his horse and disappeared into the storm. Emmy woke before dawn to the sound of crying. She was out of bed and down the hallway before she was fully awake, following the muffled sobs to the children's room. The door was cracked open. Inside, Samuel sat on the floor between the bunks. His knees pulled to his chest, tears streaming down his face. Samuel. He looked up startled and quickly wiped his eyes. I'm fine. Go away. Emmy sat down on the floor beside him, keeping her distance. You don't have to be fine. It's the middle of the night. Nobody's fine at the middle of the night. I said go away. I heard you. I'm not going anywhere. He glared at her through his tears. Why, you don't even know me. I know you're 7 years old, and you're sitting on a cold floor crying by yourself. That's enough. Samuel's lower lip trembled. I had a dream about Mama. She was right there, and I could see her face, and then I woke up and she was gone again. Emmy's heart cracked. I used to have those dreams about my mother too. They're the worst kind because they feel so real. Does it ever stop? The dreams. The hurting. Emmy thought about lying, Thought about saying, "Yes, time heals all wounds," all those empty things people said. But she remembered what Nettie had told her. These children needed honesty. "No," she said quietly. "It doesn't stop. But it changes. Right now the hurt is so big it fills up everything. But someday it'll get smaller. Not gone, never gone, but small enough that you can carry it without falling down." Samuel stared at her. "Promise? Promise." He was quiet for a long moment. Then he scooted closer just a few inches and leaned his head against her shoulder. "Don't tell Wyatt I was crying. He says crying is for babies." "Wyatt's wrong. Crying is for anyone who's brave enough to feel things." They sat there until Samuel's breathing steadied. Emmy helped him back to bed, tucked the blanket around him, and noticed Grace watching from her bunk. The little girl's eyes glinted in the darkness, but she didn't speak. "Good night, Grace," Emmy whispered. Silence. Then so soft, Emmy almost missed it. Night. 2 words now. 2 more than anyone else had heard in 2 years. Emmy slipped out of the room and nearly collided with Caleb in the hallway. He stood in the shadows, still dressed like he hadn't been to bed at all. "I heard crying," he said. "Samuel, nightmare about his mother." Caleb's jaw tightened. "He has them every week. I never know what to say to him." "Maybe you don't have to say anything. Maybe you just have to be there." He looked at her strangely. The other housekeepers used to tell him to go back to sleep. That crying wouldn't bring his mother back. That's a terrible thing to say to a child. "I know." He paused. "Thank you for being there." Emmy nodded and went back to her room, but she didn't sleep. She lay awake thinking about 5 children who had no one to hold them when the nightmares came, and a father who was so lost in his own grief that he didn't know how to reach them. Morning brought chaos. Eli woke screaming. Ruth couldn't find his favorite blanket. Samuel refused to get dressed. Wyatt announced he wasn't going to school because school was stupid. And Grace sat at the kitchen table, feeding invisible breakfast to her doll while the world fell apart around her. "Everyone sit down and eat," Emmy said, putting plates of eggs on the table. "Now." "You can't tell us what to do," Wyatt said. "You're not our mother." "No, I'm not. But I'm the person making your breakfast, and if you don't sit down and eat it, you're going to be hungry all day. Your choice." Wyatt glared at her. Emmy didn't look away. 30 seconds passed. A minute. Wyatt sat down. Emmy exhaled slowly and turned back to the stove. Small victories. After breakfast, she cornered Nettie in the kitchen. "Tell me about Silas Crane." Nettie's face went pale. "Why do you want to know about him?" "Because he's not going to stop. I saw how he looked at me at that auction. And last night—" Emmy hesitated. "I thought I saw someone on the ridge, watching the house." Nettie set down the dish she was drying. "Silas Crane owns half this territory. The mining company, the bank, the hotel, the general store. He's got the sheriff in his pocket, and the judge owes him money. What does he want with this ranch? Water rights. Caleb's land has the only natural spring for 20 miles. Without it, Crane can't expand his mining operation. He's been trying to buy this ranch for years. And Caleb won't sell. This land has been in the Thornton family for 3 generations. Caleb would die before he gave it up. Would Crane kill him for it?" Nettie was quiet for a long moment. "There was a rancher named Morrison. Had a spread about 10 miles north. Refused to sell to Crane. His barn burned down one night. Then his cattle started dying poisoned water. His wife got sick. By the end of the year, he was begging Crane to buy him out." Emmy's blood went cold. "And his wife died 6 months after they left. Crane murdered her." "Can't prove it. Can't prove any of it. That's how he works. Nothing direct, just pressure slow and steady until you break." Emmy thought about Grace's whispered words, about Samuel crying on the cold floor, about 5 children who had already lost their mother. I won't let him hurt this family, she said. Nettie looked at her with something like pity. Child, you can't stop a man like Silas Crane. Nobody can. Watch me. The first week was a war of attrition. Wyatt tested her constantly. He put a snake in her bed on Tuesday. Emmy picked it up, carried it outside, and came back to finish making dinner without comment. He hid her shoes on Wednesday. She wore Caleb's old boots instead, and didn't mention it. On Thursday, he told her she was ugly, and nobody would ever love her. Emmy looked at him and said, Maybe, but that's not your problem, is it? Your problem is the arithmetic homework you've been avoiding. Sit down. Let's work through it together. Wyatt's mouth fell open. You're not going to yell at me? Would yelling help? The other housekeepers always yelled. I'm not the other housekeepers. Emmy pulled out a chair. Sit. Arithmetic. Now. He sat. They worked through the problems together, and somewhere in the middle of long division, something shifted. Wyatt stopped trying to make her angry and started actually asking questions. I don't understand why you have to carry the one, he admitted. Here, let me show you a different way. By the end of the hour, he'd finished his homework. He didn't thank her, but he didn't insult her either. Progress. Ruth was different. She didn't fight Emmy, she watched her analyzing, judging. Every time Emmy made a decision, Ruth was there to see if she made a mistake. You're putting too much salt in the stew, Ruth said on the third day. Am I? How much does your mother usually use? Ruth froze. I don't remember. That's okay. We can figure it out together. Taste this. Too salty. Ruth took the spoon, tasted carefully. Maybe a little. So next time less salt. See, you just taught me something. Ruth's expression shifted. I taught you. You know this kitchen better than I do. You know what your family likes. I need your help, Ruth. I can't do this alone. For the first time, Ruth smiled. Just a small one, barely there. But real. Samuel was the easiest and the hardest at the same time. He wanted so badly to love Emmy, but he was terrified of the betrayal that might come after. Are you going to leave? He asked her on the 5th day, following her around the house like a shadow. I don't plan to. But you might. Everybody leaves. Emmy stopped what she was doing and knelt down to his level. Samuel, listen to me. I can't promise I'll stay forever. That wouldn't be true, and I don't like lying. But I can promise that if I ever have to leave, I'll tell you first. I won't just disappear. Okay. His eyes filled with tears. You promise. Cross my heart. He hugged her, then fierce and sudden his small arms tight around her neck. Emmy hugged him back and felt something crack open in her chest. Eli was simple. He was 2. He wanted food warmth and someone to carry him when his legs got tired. By the end of the first week, he'd decided Emmy was acceptable and started reaching for her instead of Ruth. Mama, he said one morning, holding up his arms. The kitchen went silent. Ruth dropped her spoon. Wyatt froze. Samuel's eyes went wide. Emmy bent down and picked Eli up. No, sweetheart. I'm Emmy, not Mama. Emmy, Eli said, patting her face. Emmy, Mama. Just Emmy. But Ruth was staring at her with an expression Emmy couldn't read. He doesn't remember her. He doesn't remember Mama at all. Ruth, it's not fair. Ruth's voice cracked. We all have to hurt every single day missing her, and he doesn't even know what he lost. She ran upstairs. Emmy heard a door slam. Is Ruth okay? Samuel asked. She's sad. Sometimes people need to be alone when they're sad. You didn't run away when I was sad. That's different. You were ready for company. Ruth isn't. Not yet. Emmy spent the rest of the morning giving Ruth space. At lunchtime, she made a plate and carried it upstairs. Go away, Ruth said through the door. I brought food. I'm not hungry. I'll leave it here. You don't have to talk to me, but you should eat. She set the plate down and started to walk away. "Miss Emmy." She stopped. "Yes." "Do you think Eli will ever know what he missed? Having a real mama?" Emmy turned back to the door. "I think Eli is very lucky. He has you. You've been taking care of him since he was a baby. You've been his mama in every way that matters." Silence. Then quietly, "That's what Mama said, before she died. She said to take care of Eli. She said I was the only one she trusted." "That's a lot of responsibility for a 10-year-old. "I know. I'm tired all the time." Ruth's voice broke. "But I can't stop. If I stop, who's going to take care of him?" "Maybe you don't have to do it alone anymore." The door opened. Ruth stood there, eyes red and swollen. "Do you mean that—" "Yes." Ruth threw herself at Emmy, crying into her shoulder. Emmy held her and let her sob, all the exhaustion and grief and fear pouring out at once. "I miss her so much," Ruth gasped. "I miss her every single day." I know, sweetheart, I know." They stood there for a long time, and Grace was the mystery. She didn't fight. Emmy didn't watch her suspiciously, didn't cling to her like Samuel or test her like Wyatt. She just existed in her own world. Her doll clutched tight, her eyes seeing things no one else could see. But every night when Emmy told stories, Grace moved a little closer. Every morning at breakfast, she sat a little nearer to Emmy's chair. And sometimes, when no one else was listening, she whispered single words. More, when Emmy stopped reading. Pretty, when Emmy braided Ruth's hair. Stay, when Emmy tucked her in at night. On the 8th day, Grace did something she hadn't done in 2 years. Emmy was washing dishes when she felt a tug on her skirt. She looked down to find Grace standing there, doll in hand, eyes huge and solemn. "What is it, sweetheart?" Grace held up the doll. Then she pointed at its arm where the stitching had come loose. "Hannah's hurt. You want me to fix her?" Grace nodded. Emmy dried her hands and knelt down. "Can I see?" Grace hesitated. Then slowly she held out the doll. Emmy took it carefully, reverently, like it was made of glass. "I can fix this, but I'll need to borrow Hannah for a little while. Is that okay?" Grace's eyes went wide with fear. "I promise I'll give her back. I'll fix her arm and make her good as new, but you have to trust me." Grace looked at the doll, looked at Emmy. Then she nodded once, decisive, and let go. Emmy fixed the doll that night, reinforcing the stitching, adding a small patch where the fabric was wearing thin. When she gave Hannah back to Grace the next morning, the little girl clutched it to her chest and looked up at Emmy with something like wonder. "Thank you," she whispered. A complete sentence. 2 words together. Emmy had to turn away so Grace wouldn't see her cry. That night, Caleb found her on the porch, staring at the stars. "You fixed the doll." "It wasn't hard, just needed new stitching." "Grace hasn't let anyone touch that doll since Hannah died. Not even me." Emmy shrugged. "Maybe she's ready to start trusting again." Caleb was quiet for a moment. "It's been 8 days. "I know." "You're still here." "I said I would be." He moved to stand beside her, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him. "I didn't believe you. When you said you'd stay, I thought you'd run like all the others." "I'm not the others." "No." His voice was soft. "You're not." They stood in silence, watching their breath fog in the cold air. Emmy was acutely aware of how close he was, how easy it would be to lean into him. "Silas Crane came to town today," Caleb said. Emmy's blood went cold. What did he want? To remind everyone that I owe the bank money, that if I miss one more payment, he can foreclose on the ranch. Can he do that? He owns the bank. He can do whatever he wants. Emmy turned to face him. "How bad is it? Really?" Caleb's jaw tightened. "Bad. 2 hard winters killed half my herd. I've got enough to make it through this winter maybe, but if the spring comes late or the cattle prices drop again, you'll lose everything. I'll lose my children's birthright, the land my father and grandfather built with their own hands. His voice broke. I promised Hannah I'd protect it. I promised her our children would grow up here. Emmy reached out and took his hand before she could think better of it. Then we'll find a way. Together. He looked at their joined hands, looked at her. Why do you care? You've been here 8 days. You don't owe us anything. You saved me from Silas Crane. You gave me a home when I had nothing. I owe you everything. Is that the only reason you're staying? Gratitude? Emmy's heart stuttered. No. Then why? She should pull her hand away. She should go inside. She should remember that she was the housekeeper and he was the employer, and there were 5 children sleeping upstairs who depended on both of them to be smart. Instead, she said, "Because your children need someone. Because this house needs life in it again. Because—" She stopped, unsure how to say the rest. Because— His voice was rough. Because when I look at you, I don't see a stranger who bought me at an auction. I see a man who's been carrying his family on his shoulders for 2 years and never asked anyone for help. I see someone who's so afraid of losing the people he loves that he's forgotten how to let anyone in. Caleb's grip on her hand tightened. Emmy, you don't have to say anything. I just wanted you to know. Whatever happens with Crane, whatever happens with the ranch, you're not alone anymore. For a long moment, he just looked at her. Then, he raised her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles, soft and gentle. Thank you, he whispered, for seeing me. The door banged open behind them. Pa. Wyatt stood in the doorway, his face pale. There's someone outside, riding toward the house. Caleb dropped Emmy's hand and reached for the rifle propped against the wall. Stay inside. All of you. Who is it? Emmy asked. Wyatt's voice was shaking. It's Mr. Crane, and he's got 6 men with him. Caleb's face went hard. Take the children upstairs. Lock the door. Don't come out until I tell you. Caleb? Now Emmy. She wanted to argue. She wanted to stand beside him to face whatever was coming together. But the fear in Wyatt's eyes reminded her what was at stake. She grabbed Wyatt's arm. Get your brothers and sisters. Upstairs. Now. They ran. Emmy herded the children into the big bedroom, counting heads. Wyatt, Ruth Samuel Eli in Ruth's arms, and Grace clutching Hannah. She locked the door and pushed a dresser in front of it. What's happening? Samuel asked, his voice trembling. I don't know. But your pa's going to handle it. Is it the bad man? This from Grace, her voice a whisper. Emmy knelt in front of her. What bad man, sweetheart? The one who came before, when Mama got sick. Grace's eyes were huge. He talked to Pa. Pa yelled. Mama cried. Emmy's blood went cold. Silas Crane came here before, when your mother was alive. Grace nodded. He wanted our house. Mama said no. Then she got sick. A terrible suspicion crept into Emmy's mind. Hannah Thornton had died of a fever 2 years ago. But what if it wasn't just a fever? What if gunshot? The children screamed. Emmy grabbed them, pulled them close, her body between them and the door. Stay down. Don't move. Pa! Wyatt lunged for the door. Emmy caught him around the waist. You can't go out there. He's my pa. And he told you to stay here. The best thing you can do for him right now is stay safe. Do you understand? Wyatt struggled against her grip, then went limp, tears streaming down his face. I can't lose him too. I can't. You won't. I promise. You won't. The minutes stretched like hours. Emmy held the children, listening, praying, waiting. Then footsteps on the stairs. "Emmy, it's Caleb. It's safe." She pushed the dresser aside and opened the door. Caleb stood in the hallway, his face grim but uninjured. "What happened?" "Warning shot. Crane wanted me to know he could have killed me if he wanted to." Caleb's voice was flat. "He's given me a week. Pay what I owe, or he's taking the ranch." "A week? That's not possible." "He doesn't care about possible. He cares about winning." Caleb looked past her at the children huddled together, terrified. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Emmy stepped into the hallway and closed the door behind her. "We're going to fight this. With what I've got, no money, no allies, and a man with an army at his back. It's over, Emmy. It's not over." She grabbed his arm. "Listen to me. Grace told me something. She said Crane came here before when Hannah was alive. She said he talked to you, and then Hannah got sick." Caleb went very still. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying maybe Hannah's fever wasn't an accident. I'm saying maybe Silas Crane has done this before and maybe there's proof." His face went pale. You think he killed my wife?" "I think we need to find out." Caleb stared at her for a long moment. Then something changed in his eyes. The despair faded, replaced by something harder, colder, more dangerous. "If he killed Hannah," Caleb said quietly, "I will destroy him." "Not alone. We do this together." He nodded once. "Together." Behind them, the door cracked open. Grace peeked out, her doll clutched to her chest. "Is the bad man gone?" she whispered. Emmy knelt down. "Yes, sweetheart. He's gone. For now," Grace said. "He'll come back. He always comes back." And Emmy realized that Grace had seen more than anyone knew. That maybe locked away with her silence were secrets that could bring Silas Crane down. If only she could get the little girl to trust her enough to tell them. Emmy didn't sleep that night. She sat at the kitchen table with Caleb, spreading out every piece of paper they could find from the time before Hannah's death. Bills, letters, receipts, anything that might show a connection to Silas Crane. "Here." Caleb's voice was hollow. He pushed a letter across the table. "Crane sent this 2 weeks before Hannah got sick, offering to buy the ranch. I told him no." Emmy read the letter. The words were polite, businesslike, but underneath them, she could feel the threat. "He doesn't take no for an answer." "He never has?" "What happened after you refused?" Caleb rubbed his face. "Nothing at first. Then our well went bad. Water started tasting strange. I thought it was just the dry season." Emmy's stomach dropped. "You drank the water, all of you." "For 3 weeks before I realized something was wrong. I started hauling water from the creek instead." His voice cracked. "But by then, Hannah was already sick." "The children." Samuel had stomach pains for a month. Ruth lost weight. Eli was just a baby. Hannah was nursing him, so whatever was in the water. He couldn't finish. Emmy reached across the table and took his hand. "This wasn't your fault. You didn't know." "I should have known. I should have protected them. You can't protect people from a man like Crane, not alone." Caleb looked at her. "The doctor said it was fever, said Hannah's constitution was weak from the pregnancy." "What did Hannah say?" He went still. "What do you mean? Did she ever suspect anything? Did she ever say anything about Crane?" For a long moment, Caleb didn't answer. Then he stood and walked to the fireplace, pulling a loose stone from the mantel. Behind it was a small leather journal. "I found this after she died," he said quietly. "I couldn't bring myself to read it. It felt like violating her privacy." Emmy took the journal. "May I?" He nodded. She opened it and began to read. Hannah's handwriting was small and neat, filling page after page with observations, fears, worries about her family. Emmy flipped to the final entries. "Caleb, listen to this. She read aloud, "Something is wrong with the water. I can taste it bitter metallic. The children are getting sick. I told Caleb, but he thinks I'm imagining things. I'm not imagining things. I know poison when I taste it." Caleb's face went white. She knew. "I went to see Dr. Morrison yesterday." Emmy continued reading. "He took a sample of the water, said he'd test it. But when I went back today, he said the results were inconclusive. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Someone got to him. Someone paid him to lie." "Dr. Morrison died last year," Caleb said. "Heart attack." Convenient. Emmy turned to the last entry dated 3 days before Hannah's death. "I know what Crane is doing. I have proof. I hid it where he'll never find it, in the place where our love began. If something happens to me, Caleb needs to know. The children need to be protected. God forgive me for not being brave enough to tell him myself." Emmy looked up. "Where your love began? What does that mean?" Caleb's hands were shaking. "The old mill. Down by Broken Creek. That's where I proposed to her." "Then that's where we need to go." "Emmy, it's the middle of the night. There's a storm coming. We can't—" "We have 4 days before Crane takes everything. If Hannah hid proof that he poisoned your family, we need to find it now." Caleb stared at her. Then he grabbed his coat. "Stay here with the children. I'll go." "No." "Emmy." "I said no." She stood facing him. "You're not doing this alone anymore. Nettie can watch the children. We go together." Something shifted in his expression. Fear and gratitude and something else she couldn't name. "Together," he agreed. They woke Nettie, who took one look at their faces and didn't ask questions. "Go. I've got the children. If Crane's men come, I've got a shotgun and 40 years of experience dealing with fools. Go." They rode out into the darkness, the wind already picking up, snow beginning to fall. Emmy had never been so cold in her life, but she didn't complain. Caleb pushed the horses hard, and within an hour they reached the old mill. It was abandoned, half collapsed, the wheel frozen solid in the creek. Caleb dismounted and helped Emmy down. "She used to love this place," he said quietly. "Said it reminded her of a fairy tale." "Where would she hide something?" "I don't know. We searched everywhere when we were courting. Every corner, every hiding spot." Emmy looked at the mill, thinking. "The place where your love began, not the mill itself, somewhere specific. Where exactly did you propose?" Caleb was quiet for a moment. "Inside. There's a loose floorboard near the window. She used to sit there and watch the wheel turn." They went inside. The floor was rotted in places, dangerous. Emmy tested each step carefully, following Caleb to the spot he remembered. "Here." He knelt and pried up a floorboard. Underneath was a metal box, rusted but intact. Caleb pulled it out with shaking hands and opened it. Inside were papers, dozens of them. Letters, receipts, even a vial of dried liquid labeled in Hannah's handwriting. "Well water. October 1881. "She kept the evidence," Emmy breathed. "All of it." Caleb spread the papers on the floor, reading by the dim light of their lantern. Bills of sale from Crane's company. Records of payments to Dr. Morrison. A letter from the assayer confirming arsenic in the water sample. Arsenic. Emmy's blood went cold. "He poisoned your whole family. And murdered my wife." Caleb's voice was deadly calm. "He murdered Hannah." Emmy grabbed his arm. "We need to get this to the sheriff." "The sheriff works for Crane." "Then we go over his head. The territorial marshal, the federal courts. Someone who can't be bought." Caleb looked at her, and she saw the war in his eyes. The desire for violent revenge battling against the need to do this right, to make sure Crane faced real justice. "If I kill him, I hang. My children become orphans." "Yes. But if we do this your way, he goes to prison, the ranch is safe, your children grow up with their father." Emmy squeezed his arm. "Hannah would want you to fight smart, not just fight hard. Caleb closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, the murderous rage had faded, replaced by cold determination. "All right, your way." They gathered the evidence and rode back toward the ranch. The storm had grown worse, snow falling so thick Emmy could barely see the horse in front of her. Wind cut through her clothes like knives. "We need to find shelter," Caleb shouted over the howling wind. "How far to the ranch?" 5 miles, maybe 6. We'll never make it in this." "There." Emmy pointed to a dark shape ahead. An old line cabin half buried in snow. They dismounted and forced the door open, leading the horses inside with them. The cabin was tiny, barely big enough for all of them, but it was shelter from the killing wind. Caleb found old blankets in a chest, wrapped them around Emmy. "You're freezing." "So are you." "I'm used to it." "That doesn't make it better." They huddled together for warmth, the horses breathing heavily in the corner, the wind screaming outside. Emmy couldn't stop shivering. "Thank you," Caleb said quietly. "For what?" "For making me do this the right way. For reminding me what matters. Your children matter. Your life matters. So does yours." He pulled her closer. "Emmy, I need to tell you something. In case we don't make it back. Don't talk like that. Listen to me." His voice was urgent. "When I bought you at that auction, I was just looking for someone to take care of the children. I didn't expect—" He stopped. "Didn't expect what?" "I didn't expect you. I didn't expect to feel something again. After Hannah, I thought that part of me was dead. But you came in, and you saw my children, really saw them, and you made them laugh again. And Grace is talking, Emmy. My baby girl is talking because of you." Emmy's heart was pounding. "Caleb, I know it's too soon. I know you've been through hell, and the last thing you need is some broken-down rancher with 5 kids and a target on his back. But if we get out of this, I need you to know. I love you." The words came out before she could stop them. Emmy heard herself say them, and felt her face flush with embarrassment. "I'm sorry," she said quickly. "I shouldn't have—" He kissed her. His lips were cold but soft, and Emmy melted into him, her hands clutching his coat, his arms pulling her tight against his chest. For a long moment, there was nothing else. No storm, no crane, no danger. Just the two of them finding warmth in each other. When they finally pulled apart, Caleb pressed his forehead to hers. "I love you too," he said. "God help me, Emmy. I love you too." They held each other through the night, taking turns sleeping, keeping the fire alive in the tiny stove. By morning, the storm had eased enough to travel. Emmy was the first to see the smoke. "Caleb?" Her voice was sharp. "Look." He followed her gaze and went pale. A column of black smoke rose from the direction of the ranch, thick and ugly against the gray sky. "No." He was in the saddle before Emmy could speak, urging his horse forward. "No, no, no." Emmy followed her heart in her throat. They pushed the horses as hard as they dared through the deep snow every second an eternity. The ranch came into view, and Emmy's stomach dropped. The barn was burning. "The children!" Caleb leaped from his horse and ran toward the house. "Nettie, Wyatt!" The front door burst open. Nettie stumbled out, Eli in her arms, Ruth and Samuel right behind her. "Pa!" Ruth screamed. "Pa, they took Wyatt and Grace!" Emmy reached them first. "What happened? Who took them?" "Crane's men." Nettie was coughing, her face black with smoke. "They came an hour ago. Set the barn on fire. When Wyatt tried to fight them, they grabbed him. Grace wouldn't let go of his hand, so they took her too." Caleb grabbed Ruth's shoulders. "Where did they go?" "Toward town. They said—" Ruth's voice broke. "They said if you want them back, you have to sign over the ranch. You have until sunset." Emmy watched the color drain from Caleb's face. His children, his 2 oldest children, in the hands of a murderer. "I'll kill him," Caleb whispered. "I'll kill every single one of them." "No." Emmy grabbed his arm. That's what he wants. He wants you to come charging in alone, so he can shoot you and claim self-defense. What am I supposed to do? Let him have my children. We're going to get them back, but we're going to do it smart. Emmy turned to Nettie. Can you ride to the Morrison place? Tell them what happened. We need every rancher in the territory. Nettie nodded. The Morrisons hate Crane. They'll come. Ruth Samuel, stay here with Eli. Don't leave the house. If anyone comes, hide in the cellar. What are you going to do? Samuel asked, his face white with fear. I'm going to get your brother and sister back. Emmy and Caleb rode toward town, the evidence from the mill tucked safely in Emmy's coat. She had a plan. It was desperate and dangerous, but it was the only chance they had. You're going to get yourself killed, Caleb said. Maybe, but I'm not going to let Grace and Wyatt die. Emmy, please, let me do this. Stay safe. Staying safe has never been an option for me, not since my father put me on that auction block. She looked at him. I love your children, Caleb, all 5 of them. I love them like they're my own, and I will not let Silas Crane hurt them. They reached town as the sun began to set. Crane's men were everywhere, posted outside the saloon, the bank, the sheriff's office. This wasn't just a kidnapping. It was a show of force. Emmy dismounted and walked toward the saloon. Emmy! Caleb grabbed her arm. What are you doing? Trust me. She pulled free and walked into the saloon alone. Silas Crane sat at a table in the center of the room, a glass of whiskey in his hand. Wyatt and Grace sat beside him. Their hands bound, their faces terrified. 2 armed men stood behind them. Miss Cole? Crane smiled that snake smile. I wondered when you'd arrive. Where's Thornton? Outside. Waiting. Smart man. If he'd come in here, my boys would have put a bullet in him before he got 3 steps. I have a proposition for you. Crane's eyebrows rose. Do you now? Emmy reached into her coat and pulled out Hannah's journal. I know what you did. Poisoning the water, killing Hannah Thornton. I have proof, letters, receipts, a sample of the poisoned water. Enough to hang you. The saloon went dead silent. Crane's smile faltered just for a moment. That's a dangerous accusation. It's the truth. And if anything happens to me or those children or Caleb Thornton, copies of this evidence go to the territorial marshal, the federal courts, and every newspaper in the territory. You're bluffing. Am I? Emmy met his eyes without flinching. Your man, Dr. Morrison, is dead. The assayer who tested the water sample moved to California. You've spent 2 years covering your tracks, and I just dug them all up in one night. Crane's face had gone pale with rage. What do you want? Release the children. Leave the Thornton Ranch alone. Disappear from Silver Creek and never come back. And if I refuse, then you hang for murder. Either way you lose. Crane stood slowly. His men raised their rifles. You think you can walk in here and threaten me in my town? I think you're a coward who poisons women and kidnaps children because you're too weak to face real men. Emmy's voice was steady, even though her heart was pounding. I think you've spent your whole life taking what you want because nobody had the courage to stop you. But I'm not afraid of you, Mr. Crane. I've already lost everything. You can't hurt me anymore. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Grace spoke. She's telling the truth. Everyone turned. The little girl who hadn't spoken in 2 years was looking directly at Silas Crane, her voice clear and strong. I saw you, Grace said. The night you came to our house. You put something in the well. Mama caught you. You pushed her down, and she hit her head. She was bleeding. Shut up, Crane snarled. She made me hide. She made me promise not to tell. She said you'd hurt us if I told. Grace's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't look away. But you hurt her anyway. You hurt my mama, and she died. The saloon erupted. Men who had been drinking quietly suddenly stood. Ranchers who'd lost their land to Crane. Miners who'd been cheated out of their wages. shop owners who'd been intimidated into silence. "Is that true, Crane?" A man's voice from the back. "You killed Hannah Thornton. She's a child. She doesn't know what she's saying." "She knows exactly what she's saying." This from another man stepping forward. "And I've got my own stories about your dirty dealing. So do half the men in this room." "Me too," another voice. "And me." Crane's men looked around nervously. There were only 6 of them, and the room was filling with angry townspeople. "You're finished, Crane," Emmy said. "One way or another." Crane's face twisted with rage. He reached for his gun. The shot came from behind him. Caleb stood in the doorway, smoke rising from his pistol. Crane's gun clattered to the floor, his hand bleeding. "Touch my children again," Caleb said quietly, "and the next bullet goes between your eyes." Crane clutched his wounded hand, his face white with pain and fury. "You'll hang for this, Thornton." "Maybe. But you'll hang first." The sheriff pushed through the crowd looking terrified. "What's going on here?" "Arrest Silas Crane," Emmy said. "For the murder of Hannah Thornton, the attempted murder of the Thornton children, and the poisoning of their water supply. I have evidence." "Now wait just a minute." "You can arrest him," Caleb said, his gun still trained on Crane. "Or I can kill him right now. Your choice." The sheriff looked at Crane, looked at the crowd of angry townspeople, looked at Caleb's unwavering aim. "Silas Crane, you're under arrest." Emmy ran to the children, cutting their bonds with a knife from the bar. Wyatt threw his arms around her, sobbing. Grace clung to her legs. "You came," Wyatt gasped. "I didn't think anyone would come." "I told you I wouldn't leave without saying goodbye. I'm not going anywhere." "Emmy," Grace's voice was small but clear. "I talked. I told the secret." "You did so good, sweetheart. You were so brave. Mama said I had to keep it secret to stay safe, but I couldn't let him hurt you too." Emmy pulled the little girl into her arms and held her tight. "You saved us, Grace. You saved all of us." Caleb reached them, his gun holstered, his hands shaking. He gathered all 3 of them into his arms and held on like he would never let go. "My children," he whispered. "My brave, beautiful children." Outside, more people were arriving, ranchers from the neighboring spreads alerted by Nettie. The Morrisons, the Hendersons, the Blacks. Families who had suffered under Crane's tyranny finally willing to stand up. "It's over," Emmy said. "It's really over." But Caleb was looking at something across the room. Emmy followed his gaze. Crane was being led away in chains, but he was smiling. That cold snake smile that made Emmy's blood run cold. "This isn't over," Crane called out. "Not by a long shot. I've got lawyers in Denver. I've got friends in high places. You think some backwater sheriff and a handful of ranchers can bring me down?" He locked eyes with Emmy. "I'll be back, Miss Cole. And when I come back, I'm going to burn everything you love to the ground." The door closed behind him. Emmy held the children tighter and told herself it was over, but she couldn't shake the feeling that the real battle was just beginning. Crane's threat echoed in Emmy's mind for 3 days straight. She couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. Every sound outside made her flinch, expecting his men to come back and finish what they'd started. "He's in jail," Caleb said, watching her pace the kitchen. "He can't hurt us. He's got lawyers, he's got money, he's got friends we don't even know about." Emmy stopped and faced him. "You heard what he said. He's not going to let this go. Neither are we." The territorial marshal arrived on the 4th day. His name was Thomas Harding, a weathered man with hard eyes and a reputation for being unbuyable. He listened to Emmy's evidence without interrupting, examined Hannah's journal, studied the water sample and the letters. "This is damning," he said finally. "But Crane's lawyers will argue it's circumstantial. A sick woman's paranoid ravings, a child's confused memories." "Grace saw him poison the well," Emmy said. "She saw him push Hannah. She was 3 years old. Any decent lawyer will tear her testimony apart." Caleb slammed his fist on the table. "So he gets away with it. He murdered my wife and he just walks free." "I didn't say that." Harding leaned back in his chair. "I said we need more. Other witnesses, other victims, people willing to testify." "The Morrisons," Emmy said suddenly. "Their ranch burned down 6 years ago. Everyone said it was an accident, but Mrs. Morrison told me her husband suspected Crane." "Morrison's dead." "But his wife isn't, and she kept records, just like Hannah did." Harding raised an eyebrow. "You think there are others?" "I think Crane's been doing this for years. I think half the people in this territory have stories they've been too afraid to tell." "Then find them. Get them to talk. Give me enough witnesses, and I can make this case stick." After he left, Emmy turned to Caleb. "I need to go into town." "I'll come with you." "No. You need to stay with the children. They're scared enough already." She touched his face. "I can do this. Trust me." He caught her hand, pressed it against his cheek. "I do trust you. That's what scares me." Emmy rode into Silver Creek alone. The town felt different now. People looked at her as she passed, some with curiosity, others with something like hope. Word had spread about what happened in the saloon, about the woman who'd stood up to Silas Crane. She went to the general store first. The owner, a thin woman named Margaret Shaw, watched her approach with wary eyes. "Mrs. Shaw, I need to talk to you about Silas Crane." Margaret's face went pale. "I don't know anything." "I think you do. I think everyone in this town knows something, and I think you've all been too scared to speak." Emmy leaned closer. "He's in jail now. The territorial marshal is building a case, but we need witnesses, people willing to tell the truth about what he's done." "You don't understand. Even in jail he has power. His men, his money." "His men are scattered. Half of them fled when he was arrested. The others are being watched." Emmy met her eyes. "How long are you going to let fear control your life, Mrs. Shaw? How many more people have to suffer before someone stands up?" Margaret was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached under the counter and pulled out a ledger. "He forced my husband to sell the store to him 5 years ago, threatened to burn it down if we didn't. We've been paying him rent on our own business ever since." Her voice shook. "I have records. Every payment, every threat." Emmy took the ledger, took the pallet. "Thank you." "There are others. The Hendersons lost their farm. The Blacks lost their cattle. Old Mr. Weston, his son, disappeared after he refused to sell his land. They never found the body." By the end of the day, Emmy had spoken to a dozen people. Some refused to talk, but most did, their stories pouring out like water from a broken dam. Years of fear and silence finally released. She was leaving the blacksmith shop when a woman stepped into her path. "You're the one, the auction girl." Emmy stopped. "I'm Emmy Cole." The woman was maybe 30, pretty in a worn-down way with bruises on her wrists that her sleeves couldn't quite hide. "I'm Crane's wife," she said. "Third wife. The other 2 are dead." Emmy's blood went cold. "Dead how?" "First one fell down the stairs. Second one drowned in the river." The woman laughed bitterly. "Both accidents, of course. Just like everything Silas does is an accident." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I've been waiting 5 years for someone brave enough to stop him, and you're the first one who's come close." She pressed a folded paper into Emmy's hands. "This is where he keeps his real records. The ones that show where all the bodies are buried. Literally." Emmy looked at the paper. An address. A safe combination. "Why don't you go to the marshal yourself? Because if Silas finds out I betrayed him, I'm dead. But you..." The woman smiled grimly. "You're already his enemy. You've got nothing left to lose." She disappeared into the crowd before Emmy could respond. Emmy rode back to the ranch with her head spinning. The address was a building in Helena, the territorial capital. Crane's real office, not the one everyone knew about. If his records were there, if they showed what the woman claimed. "You're not going alone." She turned. Caleb stood in the kitchen doorway, arms crossed. I have to. It's a 2-day ride to Helena and someone needs to stay with the children. Then we send someone else, one of the ranch hands. They won't know what to look for. I will. Emmy. He crossed to her, took her hands. This isn't just about the evidence anymore. Crane knows you're the one who brought him down. If his people find you alone on the road, I know the risks. Do you? Because I can't lose you. His voice cracked. I buried one woman I loved. I can't do it again. Emmy reached up and touched his face. You're not going to lose me. I promise. You can't promise that. Then I promise I'll fight like hell to come back to you. She pulled him close. I love you, Caleb Thornton. I love your children. I love this broken, beautiful life we're building together. And I'm not going to let Silas Crane take it away. He kissed her, then fierce and desperate, like he was trying to memorize the feel of her. Come back to me, he whispered against her lips. Always. She left at dawn the next morning. The children lined up on the porch to say goodbye, their faces solemn. You're coming back, right? Samuel asked, his voice small. I promise. Cross your heart. Cross my heart. Ruth hugged her tight. Be careful. Please. I will. Wyatt stood apart from the others, trying to look tough and failing. Emmy walked over to him. Take care of them while I'm gone. You're the oldest. They'll look to you. I know. His jaw tightened. Miss Emmy, I'm sorry. For everything. The snake and the shoes, and that's ancient history. She squeezed his shoulder. You're a good boy, Wyatt. Your mother would be proud of you. His eyes filled with tears, but he didn't let them fall. Just come back, okay? I will. Grace was last. The little girl stood clutching Hannah the doll, her face pale. You talked, Emmy said, kneeling down. In the saloon. You saved us all. Grace nodded slowly. I need you to keep talking, sweetheart. For your brothers and sisters, for your pa. They need to hear your voice. I'm scared, Grace whispered. The bad man said he'd come back. The bad man is never going to hurt you again. I'm going to make sure of it. Grace threw her arms around Emmy's neck. I love you. Emmy's heart cracked open. I love you too, sweetheart. So much. She rode away without looking back. If she looked back, she might not have the strength to leave. The ride to Helena took 2 days through harsh winter country. Emmy pushed her horse as hard as she dared, sleeping only a few hours each night, always watching for riders behind her. On the second night, she found them. She'd made camp in a shallow gully hidden from the road. The sound of hoofbeats woke her just past midnight, at least 4 horses moving fast. Emmy pressed herself against the rocks, barely breathing, her hand on her pistol. She came this way, a voice said. Tracks lead north. Crane's paying $500 for her. Alive. Alive means we can't shoot her. Doesn't mean we can't have some fun first. Laughter. Rough, ugly laughter that made Emmy's skin crawl. Split up. She can't have gone far. The hoofbeats scattered. Emmy waited until the sounds faded, then crept to her horse and led it quietly in the opposite direction. She walked for 3 hours before she dared to mount again. By then, dawn was breaking, and she could see Helena in the distance. The building Crane's wife had described was a lawyer's office in the respectable part of town. Emmy waited until midday, when the streets were crowded, before approaching. The front door was locked. She went around back. The rear entrance had a simple lock. Emmy had learned to pick locks years ago, back when her father had started drinking and locking up the food money. The skill came back to her now, rusty but functional. Inside the office was dark and quiet. Emmy found the safe in a back room hidden behind a portrait of Crane himself. The combination worked on the first try. Inside were stacks of papers, ledgers, letters. Emmy grabbed everything she could carry, stuffing them into her saddlebags. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold them. That's far enough. She spun around. A man stood in the doorway, a pistol aimed at her chest. One of Crane's lawyers, probably. Soft hands. Expensive suit. Mrs. Thornton sent a telegram, warned us someone might come. He smiled. She always was the loyal type, right up until she wasn't. Emmy's mind raced. I don't know what you're talking about. Please, you're the auction girl, the one who's been causing all this trouble. He stepped closer. Mr. Crane is very disappointed in you. He had such plans. He's in jail. For now. These things have a way of working themselves out. The lawyer gestured with his gun. Put the papers down and come with me. We'll sort this out quietly. Emmy set the saddlebags on the floor. Her pistol was in her coat pocket, but she'd never reach it in time. That's better. Now. The window shattered inward. A body came through, tackling the lawyer to the ground. The gun went off the bullet, splintering the ceiling. Emmy grabbed her saddlebags and ran. Outside, she found Wyatt picking himself up from the ground, blood running down his face from a cut on his forehead. Wyatt, what are you doing here? Following you. Pa sent me. The boy was shaking but defiant. He said you'd need backup. He was right. You could have been killed. So could you. Now can we argue about this later and maybe run now? They ran. Emmy's horse was where she'd left it, but there was a second horse beside it. Wyatt's a sturdy mare from the ranch. How did you find me? Followed your tracks. You're not as sneaky as you think. Wyatt was already mounting up. Come on, that lawyer's going to have every man in Helena looking for us. They rode hard for 2 hours before stopping to rest the horses. Emmy finally had a chance to look at what she'd found. The papers were even more damning than she'd hoped. Records of bribes, of land seizures, of people who'd disappeared. Names, dates, amounts. A complete accounting of Crane's empire of corruption. This is it, she breathed. This is everything we need. Great. Can we go home now? Emmy looked at the boy, this brave, foolish, wonderful boy, who'd ridden 2 days through winter wilderness to save her. Your father's going to kill both of us. Probably. Worth it, though. Wyatt grinned, and for a moment, Emmy could see the man he'd become someday. You're family now, Miss Emmy. Family takes care of each other. Family. The word hit her like a physical blow. Yeah, she said softly. We do. They reached the ranch 3 days later, exhausted and frozen, but alive. Caleb came running from the barn when he saw them, his face a mixture of relief and fury. You... He grabbed Wyatt by the shoulders. I told you to follow from a distance, not throw yourself through windows. She needed help. You're 12 years old. And she's alive because of me. Caleb opened his mouth to argue, then stopped. He pulled his son into a crushing hug. Don't ever scare me like that again. Yes, sir. Caleb released him and turned to Emmy. His eyes swept over her, checking for injuries. I'm fine, she said. Thanks to your son. We're going to have a long talk about this. Later. Right now we need to get these documents to Marshal Harding. The trial began a week later in Helena. Emmy had never seen so many people crowded into one building. Ranchers from 3 counties, miners, shop owners, even some of Crane's former associates desperate to save themselves by testifying against him. Marshal Harding presented the evidence methodically. The poisoned water, the burned ranches, the disappeared settlers. One by one, witnesses took the stand and told their stories. Mrs. Shaw described years of extortion. The Morrisons told of their barn burning down. Old Mr. Weston broke down in tears as he described searching for his son's body in the river. And then it was Emmy's turn. She walked to the witness stand on shaking legs. Crane sat at the defendant's table, his eyes burning into her with pure hatred. State your name for the record. Emmeline Cole. Miss Cole, can you describe how you came to know the defendant? Emmy took a breath. He tried to buy me at an auction. When he failed, he threatened to destroy the family that took me in. She told the whole story. The auction, the threats, the kidnapping of Wyatt and Grace, the evidence she'd found in Helena. Crane's lawyer tried to discredit her, called her a desperate woman seeking revenge, suggested she'd fabricated evidence, implied she was romantically involved with Caleb and would say anything to protect him. Emmy answered every question calmly, truthfully, without flinching. The final witness was Grace. The little girl walked to the stand in a dress that Ruth had made for her. Hannah, the doll clutched in her arms. She looked tiny and fragile, but when she sat down, her eyes met Crane's without fear. "Grace, can you tell us what you saw the night your mother got sick?" Grace's voice was soft but clear. "The bad man came to our house. I was supposed to be sleeping, but I heard voices. I went to the window." "What did you see?" "He was at the well. He put something in the water. Mama saw him. She ran outside." "What happened then?" "He pushed her. She fell down and hit her head on the rocks. She was bleeding." Grace's voice trembled. "She told me to hide. She said if I was very quiet he wouldn't find me. She said to never tell anyone what I saw." "Why didn't you tell anyone?" "Because Mama said he would hurt us if I did. And then Mama died, and I was so scared that I couldn't talk anymore. The words got stuck inside." "What made you finally speak?" Grace looked across the courtroom at Emmy. "She did. Miss Emmy. She told us stories about brave girls who rescue themselves. She said we didn't have to be afraid anymore." The little girl turned back to the jury. "So I decided to be brave, like the girls in the stories, like my mama." The courtroom was silent. Several members of the jury were openly weeping. Crane's lawyer tried to cross-examine, but Grace answered every question with the same simple honesty. She wasn't confused. She wasn't lying. She was just a little girl who had finally found the courage to tell the truth. The jury deliberated for less than an hour, guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced Crane to hang. As they led him away, Crane turned and looked at Emmy one last time. His face was twisted with hatred, but underneath it, she saw something else. Fear. The fear of a man who had finally run out of power. "This isn't over," he hissed. "Yes, it is." Emmy met his gaze without flinching. "It's been over since the moment Grace found her voice. You just didn't know it yet." They led him away, and Emmy let out a breath she felt like she'd been holding for months. It was over. It was really finally over. Outside the courthouse, the ranchers gathered around Caleb, shaking his hand, slapping his back. The wives hugged Emmy and thanked her through their tears. Children ran and played, finally free from the shadow that had hung over the territory for so long. "Miss Emmy!" She turned. Grace was running toward her, Hannah bouncing in her arms. The little girl crashed into her legs and held on tight. "We won. We won, sweetheart. Does that mean the bad man can't hurt us anymore?" "Never again." Grace smiled, a real smile, bright and beautiful. "Then can we go home now? I want to tell Ruth and Samuel everything." "Yes, baby girl. Let's go home." Caleb appeared beside her, his hand finding hers. "That was the bravest thing I've ever seen. What you did on that witness stand." "What Grace did was braver. You taught her how." He pulled her close, pressing his forehead to hers. "You taught all of us." "I just told the truth. Sometimes that's the bravest thing of all." They rode home together, the 5 children distributed among the horses, Wyatt proudly telling anyone who would listen about his daring rescue in Helena. "He jumped through a window, Pa, a real glass window." "I'm aware. We'll be discussing that later." "But it was heroic." "It was reckless and dangerous, and you're grounded for a month." "Worth it," Wyatt muttered, grinning. Emmy laughed, really laughed for the first time in weeks. The sound startled her. She'd almost forgotten what joy felt like. "What's so funny?" Caleb asked. "Nothing. Everything." She looked at him, at the children, at the snow-covered hills rolling past. "I just realized something." "What?" "I'm happy. Actually, genuinely happy." She shook her head. "I didn't think I'd ever feel this way again." Caleb reached over and took her hand. "Get used to it. because I plan to make you happy for a very long time." That sounds like a promise. It is. They reached the ranch as the sun was setting, painting the sky gold and pink. Nettie stood on the porch waving frantically. "Well, what happened? Don't keep an old woman in suspense." "Guilty!" Ruth shouted. "On all counts." Nettie let out a whoop that probably scared the horses 3 counties over. She ran down the steps and swept Emmy into a bone-crushing hug. "I knew it. I knew you'd do it." She pulled back, tears streaming down her weathered face. "Hannah would be so proud. You know that, right? She'd be so proud of all of you." That night they gathered around the fire, the whole family together. Nettie made hot chocolate. Ruth told ghost stories. Samuel fell asleep in Emmy's lap. Eli toddled between the adults, demanding to be picked up by everyone at least twice. And Grace talked. She talked about her doll and her drawings and the story she wanted Emmy to tell next. She talked about missing her mama, but being glad Emmy was here. She talked until her voice gave out, making up for 2 years of silence in a single evening. Emmy watched them all and felt her heart expand until she thought it might burst. This was her family now. Not by blood, but by choice, by love, and nothing would ever take that away. 3 weeks after the trial, Caleb asked Emmy to take a walk with him. The children were in bed, the house quiet, the winter stars sharp and bright overhead. Emmy pulled on her coat and followed him out to the barn, where the horses stamped softly in the darkness. "Something wrong?" she asked. "No." He turned to face her, and she saw something in his expression she'd never seen before. Nervousness. Caleb Thornton, who'd faced down Silas Crane without flinching, looked terrified. "I need to ask you something." "All right." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Emmy's heart stopped. "This was my grandmother's," he said, opening it. Inside was a simple gold ring with a small diamond that caught the starlight. "She gave it to my grandfather when he proposed. He gave it to my father. My father gave it to me." "Caleb, let me finish, please." He took a shaky breath. "When Hannah died, I thought my life was over. I thought I'd spend the rest of my days just surviving, keeping the ranch going, raising the children. I never expected to feel anything again. And then you walked onto that auction platform, and everything changed." Emmy's eyes filled with tears. "You saved my children. You saved my ranch. You saved me." His voice cracked. "I love you, Emmy Cole. I love you more than I thought I could love anyone after Hannah. And I'm asking, I'm begging, will you marry me?" For a long moment, Emmy couldn't speak. She looked at this man who'd been a stranger 6 weeks ago, who'd paid $600 for her at an auction, who'd become her whole world. "Yes." Caleb's face broke into a smile so wide it transformed him. "Yes. Yes, you fool. Yes, I'll marry you. Yes, I'll spend the rest of my life with you. Yes to everything." He swept her into his arms and kissed her, spinning her around until she was dizzy and laughing and crying all at once. When he finally set her down, his hands were shaking as he slid the ring onto her finger. "It fits," he said, wonder in his voice. "It's perfect." "You're perfect." "I'm really not." "You're perfect for me. For us." He pressed his forehead to hers. "We should tell the children." "Right now?" "They won't sleep anyway once Wyatt finds out we're missing. He's probably got his ear pressed to the floorboards as we speak." Emmy laughed. "Then let's go tell them." They walked back to the house hand in hand. The moment they stepped through the door, 5 faces appeared at the top of the stairs. "I knew it." Wyatt pumped his fist. "Ruth, you owe me a quarter." "You were betting on this?" Emmy asked. "We've been betting on it for weeks." Ruth was grinning. "I said he'd wait until spring. Wyatt said Christmas." "Christmas isn't for 2 more weeks." "Close enough. Pay up." Grace pushed past her siblings and ran down the stairs, throwing herself at Emmy and Caleb together. "Does this mean you're staying forever?" she asked. "Forever," Emmy promised. Does this mean I can call you Mama? Emmy's heart cracked open. She knelt down so she was at Grace's level. You can call me whatever feels right to you, sweetheart. I'm not trying to replace your real mama, but if you want to call me that, I want to. Grace's eyes were serious. You're not like Mama. Mama was soft and pretty, and she smelled like flowers. You're strong and brave, and you smell like bread. Emmy laughed through her tears. Bread? I like bread. Then I'll keep baking. Can I call you Mama too? Samuel had crept down the stairs. His voice was small, uncertain. Of course you can. Me too. This from Eli, who probably didn't fully understand what was happening, but didn't want to be left out. Yes, baby, you too. Ruth and Wyatt hung back watching. Emmy looked at them. I know you two remember your mama. I know this is complicated. You don't have to call me anything you don't want to. Ruth was quiet for a moment. Then she walked down the stairs and hugged Emmy tight. I think I'll start with Emmy, she said. But maybe someday, if that's okay. Whenever you're ready, or never. Whatever feels right. Wyatt shuffled his feet. I'm 12. I'm too old to call anyone Mama. That's fair. But I could call you family. Emmy smiled at him. Family works. Nettie appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. Well, it's about time. I've been watching you two moon at each other for weeks. I was starting to think I'd have to propose for him. You knew, Caleb asked. Child, everyone knew. The horses knew. The chickens knew. She hugged Emmy fiercely. Welcome to the family officially. Hannah would have approved. You think so? I know so. She told me once before she died that if anything ever happened to her, she hoped Caleb would find someone who could love their children as much as she did. Nettie's eyes glistened. She'd be so happy knowing he found you. The wedding was set for Christmas Eve. The whole territory seemed determined to help. Mrs. Shaw donated fabric for Emmy's dress. Mrs. Morrison baked a cake so elaborate, it took 3 people to carry it. The ranchers rebuilt the burned barn in a single weekend, refusing payment, saying it was the least they could do. I've never seen anything like this, Emmy said, watching the parade of wagons arriving with gifts and supplies. Why are they all helping? Because you gave them something they hadn't had in years, Caleb said. Hope. You showed them that if one woman could stand up to Silas Crane, maybe they could stand up too. Maybe they didn't have to be afraid anymore. I didn't do it alone. No, but you started it. That matters more than you know. The days before the wedding flew by in a blur of preparation. Ruth took charge of decorating. Wyatt appointed himself official taste tester for all the food. Samuel made paper flowers that he strung around the house. Grace worked on a secret project she wouldn't let anyone see. And Emmy spent her time pinching herself, convinced she was dreaming. Nervous? Nettie asked the night before the wedding. Terrified. Good. If you weren't nervous, I'd worry about you. Nettie sat beside her on the bed. Can I tell you something? Of course. When Caleb bought you at that auction, I was furious. I thought he'd lost his mind. $600 for a skinny girl with rope burns on her wrists. I was ready to knock some sense into him. What changed your mind? You did. The first night when you told that story to the children. I was listening outside the door. Nettie smiled. I heard Rosie say goodnight to you. First word she'd spoken in 2 years. That's when I knew. Knew what? That you weren't just a housekeeper. You were the answer to a prayer I'd been praying for 2 years. Nettie took her hand. You gave those children their father back. You gave this family its heart back. Whatever happens tomorrow, whatever happens for the rest of your life, don't you ever forget what you've done here. Emmy hugged her tight. Thank you, Nettie, for everything. Thank me by making that man happy. He deserves it after everything he's been through. I'll try. You'll do more than try. You'll succeed. I've never been wrong about people, and I'm not wrong about you. Christmas Eve dawned clear and cold. Emmy dressed in her room with Ruth's help, the simple white dress making her feel like someone out of a fairy tale. "You look beautiful," Ruth said. "You think so?" "I know so. Pa's going to cry when he sees you." "Your pa never cries." "He cried when Mama died. He cried when Grace started talking again. He cried when you came back from Helena alive." Ruth smiled. "He just doesn't let anyone see. But I see. Ruth, I want you to know something." "What?" "I'm not trying to take your place. You've been holding this family together for 2 years. You've been the mother to your brothers and sister when they needed one. I'm not here to push you out." Ruth's eyes filled with tears. "I know. I'm here to help, to share the load, to let you be a kid again." "I don't remember how to be a kid." "Then we'll figure it out together." Ruth threw her arms around Emmy. "I'm glad Pa found you. I'm so glad." "Me too, sweetheart. Me too." A knock on the door interrupted them. "Everyone's ready," Samuel called through the wood. "Pa says to come down before he loses his nerve." Emmy laughed and wiped her eyes. "Tell him I'm on my way." She walked down the stairs to find the house transformed. People packed every corner, ranchers and miners and townspeople, all here to witness the wedding of the woman who'd brought down Silas Crane. But Emmy didn't see any of them. She only saw Caleb. He stood at the fireplace with the preacher wearing his best suit, his hair combed, his beard trimmed. When he saw her, his face lit up with a smile that made her knees weak. And yes, there were tears in his eyes. "You came," he said when she reached him. "Did you think I wouldn't? I thought maybe you'd realize you could do better than a broken-down rancher with 5 kids and a pile of debt." "Never." She took his hands. "There's nowhere else I want to be. No one else I want to be with." The preacher cleared his throat. "Shall we begin?" The ceremony was simple and brief. Traditional vows spoken with trembling voices. A ring slipped onto a finger. A kiss that made the crowd cheer and the children groan. "I now pronounce you husband and wife." Emmy looked at Caleb, her husband, and felt something click into place. Like a key turning in a lock. Like coming home. "I love you," she whispered. "I love you more." "Impossible. We'll argue about it later. We have a lifetime." The celebration lasted well into the night. People ate and drank and danced. The children stayed up way past their bedtime, too excited to sleep. Wyatt actually smiled for an entire hour without stopping. Samuel fell asleep in the corner with Eli curled beside him. And Grace. Grace tugged on Emmy's hand just before midnight. "I have something for you." "What is it, sweetheart?" Grace led her to a quiet corner and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "I made this for your wedding present." Emmy opened it. It was a drawing, careful and colorful, clearly worked on for days. It showed a house with 7 figures standing in front of it. A man and a woman holding hands. 5 children of various sizes. And in the corner, a small figure with wings watching over them all. "That's Mama," Grace said, pointing to the angel. "She's in heaven now, but she's still watching. She still loves us, and she loves you too for taking care of us." Emmy couldn't speak. Tears streamed down her face as she pulled Grace into her arms. "It's beautiful," she finally managed. "It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." "Really? Really. I'm going to frame it and put it somewhere I can see it every day." Grace beamed. Then her expression grew serious. "Mama?" The word hit Emmy like a physical force. She'd heard the children call her Emmy, Miss Emmy, even family. But this was the first time Grace had called her Mama, not as a question, but as a statement. "Yes, sweetheart. I'm glad you're my new mama. My first mama picked you for us, I think. She sent you to us when we needed you." "You really believe that?" "I know it. Mama always said everything happens for a reason. Even the bad stuff. Even when she died." Grace's eyes were old and wise and completely certain. "She died so you could find us. And now we're all together. That was her plan. Emmy didn't know if she believed in plans or destiny or any of it. But looking at this little girl who'd been silent for 2 years and now couldn't stop talking, who'd been so broken and was now so whole, maybe she could believe in something. Maybe you're right, Emmy said. Maybe this was always meant to be. I know I'm right. I'm the smart one. Emmy laughed and hugged her tight. Yes, you are. The smartest one of all. Later, after the guests had gone and the children were finally asleep, Emmy found Caleb on the porch. He was staring up at the stars, his breath fogging in the cold air. What are you thinking about? She asked, sliding her arms around him. How different everything is from a year ago, from 2 months ago even. He turned to face her. A year ago I was drowning. The ranch was failing. The children were lost. I'd given up on everything except survival. And now I have a wife I love, children who are healing, a ranch that's going to make it through the winter. He shook his head. I don't know how it happened. I do. You took a chance. You spent $600 on a stranger. Best $600 I ever spent. Even though I came with trouble attached. Especially because of that. Trouble is what made you strong. Trouble is what taught you how to fight. He cupped her face in his hands. I wouldn't change a single thing about you, Emmy Thornton. Not one thing. Emmy Thornton, her new name. It felt right. I have something to tell you, she said. What? I wasn't sure before, but now I am. She took his hand and placed it on her stomach. We're going to have another baby. Caleb went completely still. What? I'm pregnant. I realized it a few days ago, but I wanted to be sure before I told you. We're... He couldn't seem to form complete sentences. A baby. Are you happy? Am I? He let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob, and pulled her into his arms. Happy doesn't begin to cover it. Emmy, this is everything. You're not worried. We already have 5 children and the ranch is still recovering and I'm not worried about anything. We'll figure it out. We always do. He kissed her long and deep, and Emmy felt the last broken piece of herself click into place. 6 weeks ago, she'd been sold at auction like cattle. Now she was a wife, a mother, and soon to be a mother again. Life had a strange way of working out. They went inside to find Wyatt standing in the hallway, his expression suspicious. Why are you two grinning like that? We have news, Caleb said. Good news or bad news? The best news. Emmy took Caleb's hand. You're going to have another brother or sister. Wyatt's jaw dropped. What? I'm pregnant. But... He looked between them, processing. Then his face broke into a grin. I'm going to be a big brother. Like a real big brother to someone who's actually smaller than me. That's generally how it works. Can I teach them to ride and fish and all the stuff I know? All of it. Can we tell the others? In the morning. Let them sleep. I'm not going to be able to sleep. This is huge. Wyatt ran up the stairs, then stopped and turned back. Miss Emmy. Emmy. He took a breath. Mom. Emmy's heart stopped. What? I know. I said I was too old. But I've been thinking. And if you're having a baby, and you're married to Pa, and you're taking care of all of us, maybe I'm not too old after all. His voice was gruff, embarrassed. So, Mom, if that's okay. Emmy walked up the stairs and pulled him into a hug. At 12, he was almost as tall as she was. It's more than okay, she whispered. It's perfect. Don't make a big deal out of it. I won't. I'm still not hugging you in public. Understood? Good. He pulled back, his face red. Night, Mom. He disappeared into his room. Emmy stood in the hallway, her hand pressed to her heart. "You okay?" Caleb asked from the bottom of the stairs. "I'm better than okay." She turned to face him, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I'm home." They went to bed, but Emmy couldn't sleep. She lay in the darkness, her husband's arm around her, listening to the sounds of the house. Eli's soft breathing in the nursery. The creak of Wyatt's bed as he shifted in his sleep. The wind rattling the windows. And underneath it all, the steady beat of Caleb's heart against her back. This was real. This was her life now. She thought about the girl she'd been, the one who'd stood on that auction platform barefoot in the snow, certain her life was over. She barely recognized that girl anymore. Emmy Thornton wasn't a victim. She wasn't property. She wasn't broken. She was a wife, a mother, a fighter. She was exactly who she was meant to be. Morning came bright and cold. Christmas morning. Emmy woke to the sound of children's voices, excited shouts echoing through the house. "It's Christmas, wake up, wake up." She and Caleb went downstairs to find chaos, wrapping paper everywhere. Gifts being torn open, children bouncing off the walls with excitement. "Look what I got." Samuel held up a wooden horse that Caleb had carved in secret. "Me too." Eli waved an identical smaller horse. Ruth was crying over a dress that Emmy had sewn late at night. Grace was clutching a new ribbon for Hannah's hair. Wyatt was pretending to be too cool for presents, but couldn't hide his grin at the new boots by the fire. "This is the best Christmas ever," Grace declared. "Every Christmas from now on will be the best," Caleb said, "because we're all together." "Even better next year," Wyatt said. "There'll be a baby." The younger children erupted with questions. Emmy and Caleb exchanged glances and laughed. "You told them," Emmy asked. "I couldn't help it. I'm too excited." "A baby?" Grace clapped her hands. "I hope it's a girl. There are too many boys." "Hey," Samuel protested. "I want a brother," Eli said. "Boys are better." "We'll love the baby no matter what," Ruth said firmly. "Right, everyone? Right," they chorused. Nettie appeared from the kitchen, her eyes suspiciously red. "Breakfast is ready, though I don't know how anyone's going to eat with all this excitement." They gathered around the table, the whole family together. Grace said a prayer, her voice clear and strong, thanking God for their home, their food, and their new mother. Emmy looked around at the faces she loved. Caleb, her husband. Wyatt, Ruth, Samuel, Grace, and Eli, her children. Nettie, who had become the grandmother she'd never had. This was her family. Built not from blood, but from choice. From love. From the courage to keep fighting, even when everything seemed lost. "What are you thinking about?" Caleb asked quietly. "About how much can change in 6 weeks. Having regrets. Not a single one." Emmy squeezed his hand under the table. "This is exactly where I'm supposed to be. Even with 5 kids and a ranch that's barely surviving and a baby on the way. Especially because of all that." She smiled at him. "I never wanted an easy life, Caleb. I wanted a meaningful one. And this is the most meaningful thing I've ever done. Raising 5 kids in the middle of nowhere. Loving 5 kids in the middle of nowhere. There's a difference." He leaned over and kissed her, ignoring the children's groans. "Get a room," Wyatt yelled. "This is our room. We own the whole house. Doesn't mean we want to see it." Emmy laughed and threw a napkin at him. He caught it and threw it back. Within seconds, a full-scale napkin war had erupted, with even Nettie joining in. In the chaos and the laughter and the love, Emmy felt something settle in her chest. Peace. She'd spent her whole life waiting for something, for her mother to come back, for her father to get sober, for someone to save her from the life she'd been trapped in. But no one had saved her. She'd saved herself. And in doing so, she'd found a family that needed her just as much as she needed them. The auction platform felt like a lifetime ago. The rope burns on her wrists had faded to nothing. The fear and the shame and the desperation had been replaced by something stronger. Love. Real love. The kind that didn't break when things got hard. The kind that grew stronger with every challenge, every obstacle, every storm. Emmy looked out the window at the snow-covered hills, the land that was now her home, and made herself a promise. She would never forget where she came from. She would never forget the girl who'd stood barefoot on that platform, waiting for someone to decide what her life was worth. But she would also never let that girl define her. Because Emmeline Thornton was not a woman who'd been bought and sold. She was a woman who'd been broken and rebuilt. She was a woman who'd faced down evil and won. She was a woman who'd chosen love, chosen family, chosen to fight for a future she'd never dared to dream of. And that woman, that brave, stubborn, unbreakable woman, was just getting started. The fire crackled in the hearth. The children laughed and played. Caleb's hand found hers under the table. And Emmy Thornton smiled because she knew with absolute certainty that the best was yet to come. Outside, the Montana wind blew cold and clean across the endless prairie. Inside, there was only warmth, only love, only home.